The desert stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun, a sea of gold rippling in the heat. Thin clusters of dry bushes spotted the landscape, their twisted forms stubborn against the dust and wind. A dirt road, rough and narrow, sliced through the desert and disappeared into the shimmering horizon. A faint hum broke the silence. In the distance, a line of jeeps moved steadily forward, their tires kicking up clouds of pale sand. Sam sat behind the wheel of the lead vehicle, one hand loosely gripping the steering wheel, the other adjusting his sunglasses. The team was here on a rescue mission, but so far, the desert had offered nothing but heat and silence. "Keep your eyes open," Sam said over the radio. His voice crackled through the static. Tracks, movement, anything. The team had been tracking reports of displaced wildlife for days now. The changing climate, the shrinking waterholes, it was forcing animals into strange, dangerous migrations. Sam had seen it before, lions straying too far from their prides, elephants wandering into abandoned towns, predators and prey clashing in places they shouldn't be. Today felt different though. He couldn't explain why, but the desert felt too still, like it was holding its breath. Then he saw her. At first, it was just a flicker, a blur against the glaring sand. Sam slowed the jeep, squinting against the sun. A figure was moving toward the road, unsteady but determined. "A lion," someone whispered through the radio. Sam nodded silently. It wasn't just any lion. It was a lioness, lean and powerful even in the distance. She carried something gently in her jaws, something small, limp. Sam brought the jeep to a stop. The other vehicles followed suit. A soft chorus of brakes and shuffling boots as the team readied themselves. Cameras clicked. Binoculars were raised. The lioness walked straight toward them without hesitation. Dust clung to her fur, and her ribs showed faintly under her golden coat. Her eyes were sharp but tired, full of a fierce kind of focus. As she drew closer, they saw the bundle she carried, a lion cub, tiny and frail, its limbs dangling weakly. The cub's head lolled to one side. It didn't make a sound. Sam felt something tighten in his chest. The lioness, Lena, slowed as she reached the middle of the dirt road. She set the cub down gently, then stood over him, looking at the jeeps with a gaze that seemed almost human. There was no fear in her, only a quiet desperation. "What's she doing?" whispered one of the team members. Sam didn't answer. He didn't know. Lena nudged the cub softly with her nose, urging him to move, to stand. The cub stirred weakly but didn't rise. Lena looked back at the jeeps, her tail flicking once, a subtle sign of tension. Sam exchanged a glance with Mara, the team's vet. She was already grabbing her medical bag. "She's asking for help," Mara said simply. The thought was staggering. Wild animals didn't approach humans like this. Lions were proud, wary creatures. They kept their distance, especially from noisy, metal monsters like jeeps. But here she was. Sam motioned for the others to stay back. Only he and Mara moved. Slowly and carefully, every step deliberate, non-threatening. The desert seemed to hold its breath again. Lena watched them approach. Her ears twitched, her muscles tense under her skin. But she didn't move. She stayed rooted next to her cub, her body a shield. Mara crouched low, speaking in soft, soothing tones as she opened her bag. Sam kept his hands visible, his posture relaxed. When Mara reached out, Lena let out a low rumble, a warning, not a threat. Mara froze, giving Lena a moment to process. To choose. After a tense second, Lena stepped back, just half a pace. Enough. Mara moved quickly then, her hands gentle as she examined the cub. His breathing was shallow, his eyes half closed. He was dangerously dehydrated, his body thin and frail. We need to get fluids into him fast, Mara said. Sam nodded. Can we move him? We have to. Moving carefully, they placed the cub onto a stretcher Mara had brought. Lena followed every movement with laser focus. Muscles coiled tight. When they lifted the cub and started walking toward the jeep, she followed close behind, almost brushing Sam's leg with her side. The team scrambled to clear space in the back of the jeep. Lena hesitated as the cub was loaded inside, her body vibrating with a low growl. Sam crouched down, meeting her eyes. You can come, he said quietly. We'll help him. It wasn't about the words. It was about the tone, the calmness, the lack of threat. Lena seemed to understand. After a long, tense pause, she jumped lightly into the back of the jeep, settling beside her cub. Sam exhaled slowly. All right, he said into the radio. Let's move. The convoy turned around and headed back toward the conservation center, the tires biting into the sand. Lena stayed pressed against her cub the entire ride, her body a barrier between him and the world. Sam glanced at her in the rearview mirror. He didn't know how the cub would fare. He didn't know what had driven Lena to cross the invisible line between wild and human. But he knew one thing. This lioness wasn't giving up. And neither were they. Ahead, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long, slanted shadows across the desert road. The race to save a life had begun. The convoy of jeeps rumbled to a halt, engines purring low before cutting off one by one. Dust hung in the air like a thin veil. The desert suddenly silent again. The team watched, breathless, as the lioness stood in the middle of the road. Lena didn't move. She didn't bolt or growl. Instead, she stayed perfectly still, her body rigid but not aggressive. Her golden fur, once proud and bright, was dulled by a layer of dust. The cub at her feet gave a weak, broken sound, a thin whimper that barely rose above the desert breeze. Sam stepped out of the jeep slowly, raising a hand to signal the others to stay put. The sun was hot on his neck, the sand glaring white around his boots. But all he could see was her, the lioness and her cub. Lena lifted her head. Their eyes locked across the stretch of dirt and sand. Sam had faced lions before, usually at a distance, usually through binoculars. They were powerful, majestic creatures, fierce protectors of their kind. But this was different. There was no anger in Lena's eyes. No wild, flaring warning. Only a deep, haunting plea. Sam felt the weight of it hit him like a punch to the chest. She's asking for help, he said aloud, his voice low but certain. No one answered. They didn't need to. The moment wrapped itself around them, heavy and unbreakable. Cavi, the cub, let out another weak cry. His tiny body trembled, struggling even to lift his head. He was skin and bones, his fur patchy and matted with sand. His ribs showed with every shallow breath. Mara, the team's veterinarian, was already moving, gathering her kit with fast, practiced hands. But Sam held up a hand to stop her. Slow, he said. We don't spook her. He could see how close to the edge Lena was, her muscles tense, her paws shifting slightly in the sand. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. For Kavi. Sam crouched down, making himself smaller, less of a threat. He kept his voice calm. Almost a whisper. "We can help," he said. Lena's ears flicked forward. She stayed where she was, eyes darting between Sam and the rest of the team in the jeeps. She wasn't ready to trust. Not yet. But she wasn't ready to run either. Mara eased out of the jeep, moving slowly, every step deliberate. She kept her hands low. Her body turned sideways. Not a predator. Not a threat. A healer. The desert around them seemed to hum with tension. One wrong move and Lena could bolt, dragging her cub with her into the unforgiving heat. Sam knew they might not get another chance. Mara stopped a few feet away. Crouching like Sam, she opened her medical bag with a quiet rustle of fabric, pulling out a small bottle of water and a syringe for hydration. Kavi whimpered again, his tiny paws scrabbling weakly at the sand. Lena glanced down at him, a soft rumble escaping her throat, not anger, but worry. Slowly, Sam took a step forward. Then another. Lena growled low, her tail lashing once through the dust. A warning. Sam froze, palms open. "We're not here to hurt him," he said gently. "We want to save him." For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then, incredibly, Lena lowered her head. Her whole body seemed to sag, as if the fight was draining out of her. She gave a soft, almost inaudible huff and stepped slightly to the side, giving him just enough space to approach. Mara moved first, crawling the last few feet on her knees. She reached Kavi carefully, brushing sand from his face with the back of her hand. The cub's eyes fluttered open, glazed and unfocused. "He's critical," Mara said under her breath. "Severely dehydrated, malnourished." Sam stayed back, giving Lena room. The lioness didn't take her eyes off Mara for a second. Her body tense, ready to strike if anything seemed wrong. Mara worked fast but gently, inserting a small needle under Kavi's loose skin and slowly pushing fluids into his tiny body. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a thread of life pulled back from the edge. Kavi whimpered softly, his tiny body relaxing just a little. Sam felt a surge of hope. "We need to move him," Mara said, glancing up. "Get him to the center. He needs full care, hydration, nutrition, antibiotics." Sam nodded. He looked at Lena. "We'll take him with us," he said, speaking as if she could understand every word. "You can come too." Lena stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned down, gently lifting Kavi by the scruff again. Her jaws impossibly careful. Sam backed toward the jeep, motioning for Mara to lead the way. The rest of the team stayed frozen in the jeeps, watching the unbelievable scene unfold. When Sam reached the open back of the jeep, he stepped aside. Lena hesitated, just for a breath, then leapt lightly into the vehicle. Laying Kavi down on a soft blanket Mara had spread out, she sat down beside him, her body pressed close, protective. Sam climbed into the front seat, heart pounding. He glanced back at her one last time before starting the engine. Lena didn't look at him. Her focus was entirely on Kavi, her head low, her body curled around him like a living shield. The convoy turned around, moving swiftly but carefully across the desert, kicking up long trails of dust behind them. Sam kept glancing in the mirror. Part of him still couldn't believe what was happening. A wild lioness riding in the back of a jeep. Trusting him, humans, with the most precious thing she had. And the weight of that trust was heavier than anything he had ever carried. Ahead, the conservation center waited, a fragile hope rising against the endless gold of the desert. The convoy froze. Engines hummed low before cutting off, one by one, until the desert fell silent again. Inside the jeeps, no one moved. Hands hovered over doors. Breath caught in throats. Nobody dared to make a sound. Out there, in the center of the road, stood Lena. Dust swirled around her legs. But she stood firm, a living wall between her cub and the unknown machine surrounding her. Behind the steering wheel, the drivers stayed perfectly still. A wrong move now, a sudden rev of the engine, a door swinging too fast, could shatter the fragile thread of trust holding the moment together. Sam understood that better than anyone. He moved slowly, methodically. One hand pushed the Jeep door open with a soft click. He slid out, keeping his body low, hands visible, no sudden movements. His boots touched the sand with barely a sound. No weapons, no threat, just him. Sam took a step forward. Then another. The heat rolled off the ground in shimmering waves. And the only sound was the faint whistle of the dry wind. Lena's golden eyes locked onto his every move. Her muscles tensed. Her ears flicked back for a second. Her instincts screamed at her to defend her cub, to fight or flee, but something held her back. Cavi whimpered softly, a breath of sound that barely stirred the air. His small body twitched weakly against the sand. Sam lowered himself further, almost kneeling, making himself smaller, less dangerous. He didn't speak. Words didn't matter anymore. This was about something older than language, about trust. Lena hesitated, her paws shifting in the dust. For one terrible second, Sam thought she would turn and run. But then, with the barest movement, Lena leaned down and gently placed Cavi on the ground in front of her. Her jaws released the cub with infinite care. Her nose brushing his head once. Lingering, she stepped back, one pace, then two. Her gaze never left her cub, or Sam. Her muscles were still coiled tight. Her tail flicking sharply once. But she didn't bolt. She didn't attack. She chose to hope. Sam didn't waste a second. He motioned swiftly to Mara, the team's vet, who was already halfway out of the Jeep. Medical bag in hand, Mara rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside the tiny, unmoving form of Cavi. Her fingers moved quickly, checking the cub's gums, his breathing, the rapid flutter of his heart. Sam stayed close, his body a shield between Lena and the rest of the team. "What's the status?" he asked. His voice low, urgent. Mara's face was grim. Severe dehydration, heat stroke. "He's in shock." She pulled a small syringe from her bag, filled it with a rehydration solution, and inserted it carefully under Cavi's skin. Cavi twitched, a weak protest, but didn't move otherwise. "We have to cool him down," Mara said. She grabbed a cloth, soaked it with water, and started gently dabbing Cavi's ears, paws, and belly, the key points where a lion cub could release heat. Sam glanced back at Lena. She was pacing now, a slow, anxious circle a few feet away. Her tail flicked in short, sharp movements, and her ears twitched constantly. Every so often, she stopped and stared at Cavi with naked desperation. "She's holding it together," Sam murmured, "but not for long. We need to move him," Mara said urgently. "Get him inside the Jeep, stable environment. Fluids." Meds. Sam nodded. Slow, careful. Together, they lifted Cavi, a bundle of fragile life, and placed him gently onto a soft blanket Mara had prepared in the back of the Jeep. Lena watched every move, her body trembling with tension, her breath coming fast. Sam backed away, giving her space. Lena didn't wait for a signal. She jumped lightly into the back of the Jeep, curling herself around her cub, her nose pressing into his side. Sam exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. "Let's move," he said into the radio. "Easy, no sudden moves." The engines coughed to life again. A soft chorus under the beating sun. The convoy turned, tires crunching softly over the sand, heading back toward the conservation center. Inside the lead Jeep, Mara worked furiously. She set up a portable IV drip, threading the line carefully into Cavi's leg. She monitored his heart rate, whispering reassurances even though she knew he couldn't understand. Sam drove carefully, every bump and jolt feeling like a personal attack. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Lena and Cavi. The cub's breathing was shallow but steady, his tiny body pressed against his mother's warmth, clinging to life by a thread. Sam's knuckles tightened on the wheel. "Come on, little guy. Hold on." The desert blurred past in shades of gold and shadow. The conservation center was still miles away, a tiny speck of hope in an ocean of sand. But right now, it felt like a lifetime. And in the back of the Jeep, a lioness kept her silent vigil, guarding her cub against a world she didn't understand, trusting humans to save what she loved most. The desert sun was slipping lower now, casting long shadows across the sand. The rescue team moved carefully, lifting Cavi onto a stretcher, cradling his fragile body with hands as gentle as possible. Every movement was deliberate, every touch light. Lena stood just a few feet away, watching. She didn't growl, she didn't lunge, she only stared, her entire world focused on that small bundle of fur. Sam caught her gaze as they placed Cavi gently into the back of the Jeep, on a nest of blankets and cooling packs. Her eyes burned into him, raw with fear and something even deeper, trust that was barely holding together. As the team secured Cavi and readied the vehicle, Lena hesitated. Then she stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, she pressed her nose to Cavi's side, breathing him in. When she pulled back, it was like she made a decision. Without sound or signal, she began to walk, following the Jeep as it rolled into motion. Sam watched in the mirror. Lena didn't run, she didn't panic, she simply walked after them, each step heavy with purpose. Her eyes locked on her cub. The desert stretched around them, vast and unforgiving, but she never wavered. Tirelessly, she padded after the vehicle, her head low, her muscles taut with exhaustion and determination. Sam's throat tightened. He tapped the radio. "Slow it down. Half speed." The convoy eased back, wheels crunching softer against the sand. They drove like that, humans and machines crawling forward while a lioness trailed behind, refusing to let her cub out of sight. Inside the Jeep, Mara monitored Cavi closely. His breathing was shallow but steady, his heart still fragile but holding on. The fluids were working, slowly pulling him back from the edge. "He's tough," Mara said, glancing up with a faint smile. Like his mother, Sam didn't answer right away. He was watching Lena. Mile after mile, she followed. She stumbled once, a tremor shaking her limbs. But she pushed on, driven by something stronger than pain or fear. When the conservation center finally appeared, a low cluster of buildings set against a strip of dry brush, Sam felt a weight lift off his chest. They were close. Kavi had a chance. But as they neared the gates, the jeeps began to pull ahead, moving faster across the flatter ground. Lena struggled to keep up. Her breaths came harder now, her legs faltering. Sam saw it happening in the rearview mirror, saw the widening gap between mother and child. And in that moment, he made his decision. He slammed his palm against the dashboard and grabbed the radio. Stop. Full stop. Now. The convoy screeched to a halt in a cloud of dust. Confused voices crackled over the radio. Sam cut him off. We're not leaving her behind, he said, voice hard. We're not separating them. For a second, nobody moved. Then, without waiting for a reply, Sam swung out of the jeep and walked back down the road. Lena stood there, panting hard, sides heaving. She was so close, only a few dozen feet away, but it might as well have been miles to her exhausted body. Sam crouched low again, hands open, non-threatening. It's okay, he said quietly. You're almost there. Come on. Lena watched him, ears pinned back with exhaustion and fear. She looked past him to the jeep where Kavi lay, barely visible, her cub, her everything. She took a shaky step forward. Then another. Sam stayed crouched, heart pounding, willing her to keep coming. Finally, with a last burst of strength, Lena closed the distance. She brushed past Sam without looking at him, heading straight for the jeep. Sam turned and walked back slowly, keeping pace with her. As they reached the vehicle, the team scrambled to clear a space. Someone opened the rear door wider. Mara leaned back, giving Lena room. Without hesitation, Lena climbed inside, settling her body protectively around Kavi. She let out a soft, rumbling sound, a deep purr that vibrated through the metal frame of the jeep. The whole team stood frozen for a moment, watching. Then Sam broke the silence. We're finding a safe place, he said firmly. We'll take care of both of them. No one argued. The engines hummed back to life, and the convoy rolled slowly forward again, this time with a lioness riding in the back. Her body curled around her cub, her head resting on the rise and fall of his tiny chest. The center gates swung open, and the jeeps pulled through. Staff rushed out to help, wide-eyed at the sight. But Sam raised a hand to slow them down. Easy, he said. Let them stay together. They brought Lena and Kavi to a large, quiet recovery pen, one shaded and safe, with enough space for Lena to stretch out beside her cub. A small team moved quickly around them, setting up medical supplies, checking vital signs, preparing hydration packs. Lena didn't move far from Kavi. She kept one paw touching him at all times, her massive body shielding him from the world. As night fell over the desert, the rescue team stood outside the enclosure, silent and tired, but deeply, deeply satisfied. Inside, under the first flickering stars, Lena closed her eyes at last, resting her head beside Kavi's. The worst was over. They were safe, together, and for the first time in what must have felt like forever to her. Lena slept, her cub breathing quietly against her side. Alive. Days turned into weeks, under the watchful care of the rescue team, and, most of all, under the constant, unbreakable presence of Lena. Kavi slowly began to heal. At first, every breath was a battle. Every flicker of movement from the tiny cub sent waves of tension through the team. Mara spent long hours at his side, adjusting IV drips, checking his vitals, measuring the slow return of strength to his frail body. But Lena was the true anchor. She never left him. She ate only when coaxed. She drank only when she could stay within sight of him. She slept curled around Kavi's small form, as if trying to shield him from the world itself. And slowly, impossibly, Kavi responded. His breathing grew deeper. His tiny limbs stopped trembling. His eyes, once glazed and distant, began to track movement around him. One morning, he even let out a thin, squeaky growl, a sound so weak it was barely more than a whisper. But it brought cheers from the entire team. Mara smiled as she cleaned a small wound along Kavi's paw. "You've got a fighter on your hands, Lena," she said softly. The lioness answered only with a low, steady purr, her gaze never leaving her cub. News of their story didn't stay contained within the desert. One of the team members, without thinking much of it at the time, had snapped a picture, Lena standing in the middle of the dirt road, dusty and exhausted, staring straight into the lens with Kavi dangling weakly from her jaws. It was a moment frozen in time, a wild creature laying down her pride, her fear, everything she knew, all for the slimmest hope of saving her child. The photo went viral. Across the world, people stopped to stare at it, people in crowded cities and remote villages, in gleaming skyscrapers and lonely farmhouses. It spoke a language that needed no translation. It spoke of trust, of desperation, of a bond so pure that it shattered the ancient barrier between human and beast. In news reports, blogs, and social media posts, Lena became a symbol, not just of the fierce power of a mother's love, but of something deeper, the possibility of connection between two worlds that had long seen each other as enemies. Wildlife conservation groups picked up the story. Donations poured into rescue efforts across the region. Volunteers signed up. People who had never given a second thought to lions, to deserts, to distant corners of the world, suddenly cared, because Lena had reminded them that life, all life, was stitched together by the same invisible threads of love, need, and hope. At the conservation center, Sam stood by the enclosure one evening, watching as Kavi, still a little shaky, but determined, pounced clumsily at his mother's tail. Lena shifted lazily, batting him back with a massive paw. "Careful not to hurt him. He's going to be just fine," Mara said, stepping up beside Sam. Sam nodded. He didn't take his eyes off them. "They both are," he said. The plan was already in motion. Once Kavi was strong enough, and Lena fully recovered, they would be released together into a protected reserve, vast, wild, and safe, a place where Lena could teach her son to hunt, to survive, to be what he was born to be, a place where they could be free. Sam watched as Kavi toppled over into the grass, his legs too short for his ambitions. He let out a tiny roar of frustration. Lena leaned down, nuzzling him with a gentleness that still stunned Sam every time he saw it. There was a time, not long ago, when Lena would have never approached a human. She would have fled at the first scent of them on the wind. Fear was baked into her blood by thousands of years of instinct. But that day on the road, she had made a choice. She had chosen love over fear. Sam turned away from the enclosure, the desert air cooling as the sun dipped behind the hills. He knew he would carry this story with him forever, a reminder in the middle of all the noise and chaos that some things were still pure, still worth fighting for, and somewhere, in every corner of the world where the photo had been seen, someone else carried it too, a reminder that miracles weren't always loud. Sometimes they came on quiet feet, wrapped in dust and desperation. Sometimes they came in the form of a mother refusing to give up. As the stars pricked the sky, Sam glanced back one last time at Lena and Kavi, curled up together in the fading light. And he thought, sometimes, the instinct to be a mother is strong enough to overcome even the oldest fear, and ask for a miracle.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.